everybody. I'm Aaron Moog, host of the Zero Sum Cybersecurity Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Today on the episode, we have Justin Somaini, who is a security legend, industry legend. Excited to have him on. So thanks for being on, Justin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure, Aaron. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come here and spending some time with you.
Awesome. So for those who don't know, Justin is one of these industry guys who's had a bunch of different hats over time. And it's interesting because I'll listen to your content. You have a great new pod. I'll sort of hear people introduce you when you do other pods. And it's very like humble. It's like he was a CISO. I would sort of put you in the category of like the original CISOs. I would put you with like Phil Venables and Jim Ruth as like guys that you're like, set the model for what a CISO could be, like in my mind. And I think, I always approach from the vendor side of like, you were sort of a scary CISO, like people be like, I got a meeting with Justin, yikes. And, whether it was Yahoo or Symantec or SAP or wherever you were at, I thought you brought a lot of like real world to it. And people always sort of talked about you with the sort of, a relevance and sort of an admiration of like, he's one of the real ones. So I know you probably wouldn't brag that about yourself, but I view you as somebody who built the CISO role out, as somebody who is a Hall of Fame CISO. And so I'm so excited for you to bring that to our show, along with all the stuff you're doing now around investing and podcasting, all that cool shit. The credibility is there for me to go like, if this dude thinks it's real, it's real. Like I
really, really appreciate that. You're going to have to come to every party and talk about me. I'm going to put you on stipend or something. But it's interesting that you bring it up and characterize it. I remember when I was early days at Schwab. This was like 26 years ago. And I reached out to Steve Katz, who was the first CISO ever.
Citibank guy, right?
Yeah. And I was so excited because I had coffee with him and lunch with him. And I was kind of nervous because, like all of us, we're in the beginning of all of our careers. And he was just the most down to earth, open, kind of gracious kind of guy, even still, all of his years. And it just kind of stuck with me. So to be kind of in that same ballpark or even in that same continent as him is deeply humbling and appreciative. Thank you.
Well, I would solidly put you on that island of the people I look at as like the invention of the modern CISO, of bridging technical with business, with vendor relations, which, even to this day is super important, but like nobody built anything back then. You had to buy checkpoints or Raptors. You had to buy Symantec AV. There was nothing to build. So I think that's very cool. And then you sort of transition that into, I would say more of the, I guess, vendor side, but really more investor side. You were at YL. You have done, I think, quite a bit of private stuff with firms. I've heard your name bandied about. It's funny when you hit this level, like people like me, like use you in pitch decks. Like here's a quote from Justin, or here's a, give me money in the VC world because he's an advisor. It's funny when you hit that transition point to being a customer to like a point of bragging.
I don't know, man. It's sometimes the things that come out of my mouth are not necessarily the most highlighted kind of statement. So you should send them over to me whenever you find them. It'd be great.
I will. I'll be like, this guy, put him in your pitch deck. But so all that being said, right, this is the pod about our industry, right? Not necessarily focused on any one angle. I've had founders on, I've had CISOs on, I've had like deeply practical practitioners who like do it every day. And part of that for me is I think our industry is at an inflection point of some kind of where do we go? Obviously there's this AI wave. There's sort of the era of like YOLO security of just like, I'm going to upload that to a model. Like who cares? And in some ways we're less important than we've ever been, but in some ways we're defining the future of what this whole AI thing is going to look like. So I'll start there, just as a point of conversation of like, where do you think we're at? Like you see a lot, like, how do you feel about current state of cyber? Are you happy, sad? Do you wake up despondent or excited? Like, where are you at in that cycle?
I am incredibly optimistic, excited, and I'll monologue a little bit. I apologize.
No,
Anybody
please.
that knows me knows not to get between me and a microphone, and so my apologies. So what? I've been doing security for 30 some odd years, and in a bunch of different industries and types of company sizes, public, private, all around. I came to an understanding years ago of why security fails. And I have a little bit dramatic kind of statement here, right? Where as an industry, we've never been able to truly achieve the objective of the mission to secure our company and customers. There's always a risk, a problem, usually more than we would like to see or comfortable acknowledging. And a lot of that is a result of a couple of different problems, two problems. The first one is we have a labor problem. Is we're never going to be able to hire enough people, even with unlimited money, to be able to review all code before releases, for example, in an agile CI/CD pipeline. We're never going to be able to catch all people doing, human behavior issues. And so there's always that problem. Second to that, as an industry, we haven't really achieved the ability of a shared accountability model with the rest of the business units, engineering, IT, or otherwise, and incorporate our processes in those functions transparently. But instead, we have this labor cast over to those teams, which creates friction naturally. Even in the best of situations, it's a smile with friction. And so there's a lot of issues, but today is really the first time that I think that we have achieved an opportunity to dramatically lessen the unnecessary human labor in those processes with a semantic model. Now, it's early days. As we all very well know, it's been out for a couple of years, but generally getting the integrity down and understanding it and adopting it is still early. But back of a napkin, if you look at 90 to 95% of the workloads security teams do, it is pattern matching. We're building the same Model T4 over and over again. That is incredibly exciting, not only to just finally highly automate those things that humans do, but don't necessarily derive a lot of joy from. But also we can meet the scale of how the needs and demands of what the business is. And so we can review every line of code going into production. We can do all of those kind of things that we've had to kind of pull back on because they've been heavily laborious. And so for me, that's incredibly exciting. And there's a lot of things that go into that on what it could mean on our ability to advance the mission and objective and capability of what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, I 100% am with you on that. I'm kind of in a similar space, maybe a little bit more cynical some days, but the ability for us to scale what matters with AI is amazing. And just not just AI, but all this tech we have available to us is like pretty cool. I always worry about are we letting sort of money and hype make that not a reality, right? Because obviously that's a big force in our industry right now. And, the business in itself is moving so fast, right? Everybody's scared of getting fired if they're not doing AI fast enough. Some of these valuations and money being spent are like, I don't know who's going to pay for all this, but it seems astronomical. So there's a little bit of fear of a crash, but we've crashed before, and it created, out of those ashes rose a bunch of really great security companies. Think about the Web 1.0 crash, resulted in a lot of great companies. The OA crash resulted in a lot of great companies, and then these big changes, from endpoint AB to EDR or whatever it is. These things create incredible opportunities and chances to win. The side that you've been doing, I guess, for a while now on more of the investor side, how do you wade through the bullshit? I guess, like, how are you, like, I mean, obviously you have a lot of
Yeah.
experience to rely on, but like, there's more snake oil salesmen in security than there've ever been. There's more people in security who don't care about the mission than there have ever been. Like, how do you sort of separate the wheat from the chaff in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I am not going to break new analytical insights here, but I
Sure.
do think that the time that I spent in venture and as a traveler in venture, you kind of pick up how really good investors do just that. And the first thing I used to, God, I think it was on a podcast at Black Hat like a couple years ago, and there was a couple of investors around the table, and then there was me, and they said, "Oh, what is the biggest thing that you analyze?" And they say, "Founders, founders, founders, founders," and I'm like, it's got to be the product. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? How are you solving it? And I said, I'll give you a token. I will tell you maybe 20% on the founders, but 80% it's going to be on the product. Within 12 months, man, my ship turned around so fast. It was not even funny. I came back and talked to some of them, and I said, all right, maybe it's like 70% founders when they were saying 90, 95.
Right.
So what does that mean? When you look at the efficacy of building a company to take feedback, to go out and hunt, for those customers, there's a lot in that seed to A stage before you're really building out that go-to-market team that's really on the founders. And so the ability to synthesize the problem, understand the problem, communicate out the problem, to get potential buyers on the same page, even if it's like the first 10 customers in that seed to A kind of range, is really on the founders. And if you're a first-time founder and you've never done that before, you've got a massive educational hurdle. For any founder, I've generally seen sales is a challenge. Marketing is a challenge.
Yeah.
But if you've been there and you've done that, you've learned that, hey, that was really hard. I'm going to hire my product marketing person on day one, not wait until, so there's these things that you learn. So that profile of simply, are you a first time or second time founder, is a very material thing. The second one is, VCs spend so much time doing background on the founders before they invest in them, 5, 10, 15 referrals outside of what the founders have said. It reminds me of going through a clearance process, when they go through and do it. But it's so critically important to know the person and the background and expertise and capabilities. Because generally speaking, the product and the problem use case has a high probability of changing in the first couple of years. So what you're investing in is really the people and their ability to go through the journey and end up in a successful outcome. And so that is the first thing. And how do you interview somebody? When you see that CEO and you're talking with them, what I look for is that a salesperson or is it a product engineer trying to fake it as a salesperson? And the reason why is that CEO is going to have to be out there selling all day, every day. And if they can't do it, it's going to be a challenge. The second thing, I'm being a practitioner, I look at the problem space. Well, I love DRM. I don't know if I'm going to invest in any DRM company.
Probably not. Yeah.
So having said that, is this a cornerstone problem, a need to have, or a nice to have? Maybe is a better way of saying it. So that's another one. And then the competitors, is this a wave that's already out there and we're kind of catching up and you've got those natural go-to-market hurdles? Or, hey, are you right at the cusp and going out? And we see that now with agentic AI, security solutions, and security solutions leveraging AI, what is the use case? And then you get into the tech, is it FUD or is it tangible? Is it real? Or is it like, no, that's, you don't understand the problem, nor do you understand the technology. That's generally rare, but it does happen every now and then.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about especially the people side of it, because, as a CISO, like as a buyer, you have a certain mindset, which is like, I have a problem, help me fix it, right? Like, or whatever your particular lens is. And then you talk about transition investing and you're like, the people matter. And like, it's funny to watch founders especially go through this transition. So I spent a lot of my time with like founders of startups, and the things you did to raise money are very disconnected from the things you do to make money, right? Like, nobody gives a shit you had a round, right? That you raised money. Nobody. Like, they act like we care, and they're like, oh, we raised 100 million or 200 million or 40 million. And yeah, maybe it's a news story for a day, but like a CISO doesn't care. And like the personal story, like, I mean, and no offense to anybody, but like, I have heard the Israeli military story 200 times at this point, but more than that, hundreds and hundreds of times. And great. Like, I appreciate the fact they're very good at what they do, but like, what's the next sentence? Like, how do you solve a problem that affects me? So it is funny to watch sort of you say that about VCing, because it's like, like your thesis on the sales side is right. Like, I have a problem, you have a solution. Yeah, the people making it matter, but like at the end of the day, a crap product's a crap product. Doesn't matter if Kevin Mandia built it. If it sucks, right?
Well, I mean,
not that his does. I'm just saying, like, brand name.
Your point is exactly on, because it's fascinating when you watch those, the maturity of the messaging or the sales messaging. Because in the beginning days, they're selling to that seed VC. That first slide is their background. It's not the problem. It's not the product. It's, okay, here's us. Here's our background. Here's our bona fides, whatever it is. And so when they are talking to design partners, which is, hey, we're still in stealth and we need our, 5 design partners to kind of figure out our product, they're still using that same VC pitch where, hey, this is us. And you see that disconnected. So my guidance, my advice is like, okay, just drop that first slide, start with the problem, and then start with the solution. 2 slides, make it very simple, and then do the other problem that generally happens is they haven't worked the problem or the product, down. And so it becomes like a 15-minute conversation on what is the problem that they're trying to solve or how they're solving it. And it was like, you've already lost me. If you can't nail it in that elevator pitch in the beginning and then go into explode a lot more, I question if you really know it yourself, in a lot of ways. And it's a messaging, it's a refinement, but you're absolutely right. And it's, hey, who's your audience, and tailor the conversation for that.
When you were, doing investing in VC and I'm sure you just do some of it. So I sort of look at, especially first time founders, as like teenagers. Like, you can't tell them anything. They know. They're like so sure they know what they're doing. And then they, like you said about pivoting, even pivoting is like really just them not knowing what they're doing. Like, that's really what a pivot is. It's like, I'm going to create this thing. And you're like, nobody wants your dead cat. Stop walking around town with it. And then they'll pivot. And sometimes they figure out, most of the time they don't. But did it make you crazy they wouldn't listen to you? Because like, for me, I advise them, but like, I'm not a famous CISO. I don't necessarily have that background. I'm sort of like this. I believe in this kind of message. But like, did you find that it took them a while to listen? Like a couple of mistakes?
I didn't get that problem a lot. All of the founders, in my experience, were eager to solicit and very open to receive the critical feedback. Obviously YL is Israeli source, of founders, and legend and lore is Israeli culture is very, self-critical. Give me that critical feedback, and so maybe that was part of it. But it's really around the personality. What do they do after that? So you got the feedback. Are you in analysis paralysis, or do you just dismiss it? Or do you take that and say, hey, I want to bounce that same feedback off of 4 other people? Usually you have more than one board member, usually you have trusted advisors, you have your own network, really solicit that one voice. And do I have a consensus? Does it resonate? I mean, there's things that I have said in hindsight. I'm like, I'm going to pull that back. I was wrong.
Sure.
New data came in. Hey, we're gonna switch gears. And so I think that not just taking one person's word on it is really important. Was it frustrating when I've given feedback, and I'm thinking about one particular case, and this was a while ago. Yes, it was very, very painful, because I'm an operator.
Yeah, because right?
I
Yeah,
just want to jump in and help out, and that persona doesn't lend itself to being the wise man on the mountain, just passively, kind of participating.
right.
I'm an active participant, and so I think that was more me than it was them. But yeah, it was. You do see that in the VC world. Operators go VC and then they go back operational because that is, that's a muscle memory that where they enjoy
Yeah,
getting their hands in it, right?
it's it's tough to sit in the back seat and give directions when you know the right way to go, and they're driving, and you gotta let them figure it
Yeah,
out.
that's right.
A lot like teenagers, where it's like you gotta let them learn, and the second and third and fourth and fifth time founders need way less of that. But I also feel like sometimes they're worse. Like sometimes because they worked once, they think they know the formula, and I think this is really noticeable in AI because 2 years ago, like RSA 2023, 24, whatever, 23, like there was something like 3 or 4 thousand vendors present in San Francisco, almost none of which were talking about AI. And then all of a sudden AI became the story. And like, well, I thought you knew the future. Like you were all telling me you knew what was going to happen. And now you're all left for dead because there's this new cast of characters in AI security, and they're raising obscene amounts of money, right? Like hundreds of millions of dollars to your what felt like a big $12 million round. So I'm sure you have investments and friends that like got stuck in that generational transition, where they were doing something, cloud security, which is sort of I don't know if it's a dead market, but it's definitely not receiving a lot of attention. What are you telling now? Like, are you like pivot or keep going, or like where do you land there?
Yeah, let's there's a bit of history, I think, on the founder and VC side that I think is really important. When you look at the 2019 vintage of funds.
Vintage is a great term. Yeah.
Yeah, well, their words, not mine.
Right. I just like
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, actually, I was told if I've in it for more than 12 months, I can't say it's them and not me. It's,
Okay.
it's like,
Fair.
but anyways, you had so much money going into startups with valuations increasing more than what was average norm. We didn't have a proportional amount of exits. And so at this point, which is roughly 7 years later, where you start getting those exits to the LPs, we've got a lot of zombies out there, a lot of companies moving forward, which should have gotten bought out, M&A, or closed. And so those returns going to the LPs hasn't been there. And that's really, really important as the next fund in this AI space, the timing, it's not an AI fund, but that the timing of where money is going into, we have yet again, huge explosion in valuations. But the LPs for those funds saying, hey, I'm going to raise a new fund, that cash liquidity is just not there in a lot of ways for those new funds to come. So one, as a backdrop, we have a very big question in the VC world of how many funds are going to explode. Not because of AI, just because of this backlog of lack of liquidity from the 2019, 2020 kind of era. And so the second question we have is, we do have some astronomical valuations. Now, that would be fine if the M&A space moved proportionally, but the M&A space is roughly in the 100 to 600 million range, of companies getting acquired. The whizzes of the world, billion and plus, I think is maybe one a year. So it is such an such an outlier. But everybody thinks that their company is the next whiz, 32 billion, 16 billion, whatever it is. So they are willing to take on that money early to get those large valuations say, hey, I raised 100 at an A round. And so my valuation is maybe, 600 million, a billion already putting yourself at M&A. So you're at the A round. You might have maybe $1 million in revenue, if that. And you're already saying you're going to go IPO. That's insane. That's insane. The inverse problem, and this is why it's really important, because the valuations are so high, and we've seen this so many times, the large funds, the Sequoias of the world, et cetera, are being forced to swim downstream to seed so they can put a check in to get money out of valuation, because they can't make money on a B round or C round because they're not going to get their 3 to 5 multiple because valuations are already so high at that point. Yeah. So they're having to come down and compete at the seed round, which is only creating more of a problem why these seed and A rounds are getting so large in volume. And so eventually it's going to explode. We've seen this problem before and everything goes back. The question is when and if. So to your question, again, I monologue, sorry. Okay. So to your question, my advice is, when you're greedy, pigs get slaughtered. And so I get it. You got to have money to be competitive, but you need to find a healthy point of what you're really committing to. There was a seed company, preemptive A round, no customers, $100+ million in an A round valuation. And I'm just like, why? It just why?
Seems
it doesn't
like
make any sense.
It's like being born with like a weight around your neck. Like
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Like, so I'm not an investor. I'm a go-to-market person. I know how hard it is to get $100 million of ARR. I know how, especially in cyber, it's so hard. Yeah. And it's like, we're a seed company and we're a unicorn. I'm like, okay. But you're going to need to get to 100 million plus really fast, right? And, Wiz obviously did it like a year, like some of these companies can't do it fast, but like to your point, that's the absolute outlier. Like most of the time it's a grind, it's a knife fight for $25,000 deals. And like doing that with this IOU of a couple $1 billion is really hard. Again, maybe they'll pull it off. Some of the guys doing this, I look at that, I'm like, I'd give Lou $100 million. I'd give Kevin $100 million. Like these guys are badasses, but some of these guys, I'm like, okay, you've never done it. And not that they can't do it. It's just you're starting the race, like with really behind the starting line versus some of these guys that are doing, smaller rounds, still great money. Like I had Ed Bellis on the phone. He raised 25 mil for Empirical. Like, mwah, like perfect. Like you're gonna he's had an amazing exit. He's gonna kill it. Like, yes, let me write a check. So like, there is a balance there. Do you have stuff that you are looking at, again, like even in out of your own money or whatever it may be? Is there a sector or a space, obviously just generic AI, but like that you think in cyber is like, that's where I think we're gonna go, like, or that's what I think is really cool?
That's a great question. There's need to have and nice to haves. Mm-hmm. And so the first one from a buyer's point is this a tuck-in to another product? And everything is, what is the valuation that you're investing so you can see a return? The other one is this actually solving a problem, or is this a problem looking for, a nail looking for a hammer, right, or a hammer looking
lots
for
of those.
I don't know. Yeah, lots of those.
Yeah.
And so a couple of spaces, like the other one, and I've always had this thought when, Palo Alto came out and Checkpoint is, what is the time delay between these innovation waves within a sector? Firewalls, for example, we see like endpoint right now, where the CrowdStrike, the SentinelOnes, et cetera, that 7 years, kind of rubric or kind of milestone that I have is well past its due. I think it's really healthy for, a lot of new companies to come in and coming in with a AI approach. I don't think AI is the label. It's kind of like, well, we never called products a relational database solution. Right. It's like, well, they all have them, but right. It's a tool to make the overarching solution better. And having that within endpoint, for example, I think Glow just came out. Great team, great product. If they're listening, I'd love them to have the podcast. I think it's going to be great. So that endpoint space is really, and there's a couple other players there, but they're the one that just came out that I was thinking about. I had a couple of other companies in the SOC. There's a lot of SOC solutions, but really, but there's only like three that you really should look at, Right. And we can get into how do you differentiate between those if you want, but there's some really good ones that are, have legs to kind of go the distance that I'm really excited in. I would say generally almost all, problems I think can be better to delabor the overarching problems. We see that in DLP. We see that in maybe not the GRC space. That's my personal love, which is odd. But yeah, I mean, then there's interesting ones. There was a couple of companies that, like going back to the endpoint, where the legacy providers are not looking at non-binary code. And we have a lot of compromises in that space. And so a couple of companies, startups took on okay, we're going to analyze non-compiled code and for risk issues, et cetera. I think one got bought up, but interesting kind of flushing out of the solution set. I don't think it's maybe a standalone endpoint. It should be included in a overarching one, so we don't have multiple agents. I do think the DLP ones are important because I love DLP, but we need a better analytical capability to kind of reduce false positives and everything else. AppSec, well, the open source project, COSI is there. I talked with Omar Santos from Cisco, and he kind of brought that up and dug into it. But how do you create that secure harness? How do you create the security layer? And you get into agentics and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I think that's a big thing everybody's focused on that I'm really excited about as well. But yeah, we'll see what the actual architecture looks like, 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, it's funny because we're recording this and this should be out right before Black Hat of this year, right? So 2026. I'm overall pretty underwhelmed by a lot of the products that are coming out right now because I just fundamentally look at like the retread of some of this stuff is like in my career I've never seen more failed projects than DLP. Like that's the project I've seen fail the most across 26 years of doing security consulting.
Why did it fail for you? What was your gripe with it? Concerns?
I remember I was at a very large company once, so they're like, yeah, we've had DLP on for 2 years and we've never looked at it because we know if we open it up, it all becomes our problem. And we're not business process consultants, we're security guys, right? Yeah. These are not threats for the most part. These are broken business processes and nobody ever owned that, right? Nobody ever had the capability to go out and advise these organizations on how to, this is exactly what's replaying in AI, right? Your CFO just uploaded next quarter's financial projections into Claude, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. Don't even bother. They're not going to listen to you. AI is doing what it's going to do. You have zero hope of fixing that particular problem from a you did wrong, don't do it perspective. Your only option is to create an approved channel that they should be using that has some kind of constraint around it. That's it. Yeah. That's like, in my opinion, good luck. Even inside of like government, but sure as hell inside of Fortune 500, it's like good luck. And so, I look at this and go, I hate the idea of taking AI and applying it to the same thing we've been doing for 25 years. I get it because it sells and it makes sense, but like, shouldn't we rethink some of these things? So like, I was just talking to somebody else who's like a hardcore AppSec person. I'm like, what the hell happened to WAF? Like, where did that go? Like, what happened to the idea of stopping these attacks before they hit code base?
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw somebody write a WAF check out of VC? Like 15 years ago, right? And so I just look at that and go like, okay, so the reason we, like even Zero Trust, I'll use that as an example. Zero Trust never worked. I've pitched it forever. I've sold versions of it. But at the end of the day, anything built on static rules breaks and you end up building so many exceptions, it doesn't work, right? Like, oh, that CFO can't have access to this because, and then you allow it, and then it just turns into Swiss cheese. But part of that is we can apply AI to these rules, right? So if I'm thinking about, that type of process, I'm going, okay, you try to log into this app. You don't normally do that. You can have AI ask them, hey man, why are you doing this? Like, you don't normally do this. Why are you doing this? Little chat window. Yeah, I'm working on this business project, blah, blah, blah. Click. Yeah, okay, cool. Like, it's just a decision engine. That's stuff we can never do with firewall rules and allow tables and all this kind of stuff. I don't hear anybody talking about that. Well, see, all I hear about is the same old shit that we've been trying to sell for 10 years, and it just
so I think it's really, really important. Maybe two things. When we say AI, one, we're talking about generally, we're talking about transformers, semantic models. I mean, there's a lot of different algos out there, similarity, blah, 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 librarian, dynamic librarians, whatever. The whole intent should be to solve the labor problem of that the security team has. It really, really should. So the question would go, let's use DLP as an example in my mind. All right, let's assume we have exact data matching on social security numbers for our employees, and we're finding, so let's, just for the sake of argument, assume that false positive isn't there. But tax season rolls around. Now the security team is inundated with all of these people sending out their tax forms with social security numbers on them. It's a labor problem. So now so the security team would go, oh, crap. Oh, well, we know what it is. It's not our problem. Just ignore it. It's not a false positive, but it's not material. So we'll just kind of, I don't want to say look the other way, but effectively. What the semantic model should do is ease the workload process problem to delabor what should be done but couldn't be done because of the labor constraint. So to your point, wow, we see this, send a Slack message, hey Bob, you send out your tax forms, clear text over email, which means that it's stored on 50 million systems all over the internet. You should use an encrypted capability that we already approved, like a Dropbox or a Box or maybe, I don't know, whatever solution that's there. So the thoughtfulness of what it's really there for, I think is a really important question to say, what is AI? Now, if somebody says, I've got DLP with AI, you should be like, well, what does it do? What is the value that it brings?
Explain that to me, yeah.
Explain that to me should be the real question. What would be better is if those companies would say, of course we have AI in our product like a lot of other tools, but we leverage it to do X. Right. This is what it's doing. This is the outcome that you should expect. That labor problem, Justin, that you had, you don't really need to deal with it as much because we can integrate with Slack and kind of have that conversation with the employee to figure out if it's real and kind of educate them. And I don't think that's there. And I'm sure there is a lot of companies that have Slap AI, and I've seen them, Slap AI on a logo. But I do think there are some really thoughtful implementations of it. How do you find them and not the others? Maybe that's a fair question. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like all markets, it'll shake itself out, and some stuff will make its way into the big guys. And then some startups will have really creative answers. And I guess like for me, the idea of reinventing things in this new paradigm of like this amazing decision engine. Like if you think about it, Justin, if you and I were sitting next to a CFO all day, like that was our job, just sitting next to him in a chair and watching what they're doing, they would probably never get hacked. Like almost for sure, right? Don't do that. Don't click on that. That's stupid. Right. That's not where you file your check. That's not a real wire transfer request. Like we would instinctively know what is stupid and what is smart, right?
Yeah.
And it's never been static. It's always been intent and feel and intuition. And I think for the first time, we have models that are somewhat capable. I'm not saying they're capable of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Obviously, there's a bunch of bridges cost, like how much those tokens are going to cost. Do you really need to watch everything? There's all these like problems with it. But I would love to see some of these, some at the other day, like, why the hell doesn't Claude know it's me? Like Claude knows everything about me. Like there was I think I was just talking about this. There's an Onion headline that came out that said Americans are now spending 80% of their time entering 6-digit codes from their phone. Like, and that's how I felt about security at that moment. I'm like, that's all we're doing now is just here's a code. And I'm like, Claude should know that it's me. Like, it's me. Like, they know everything about me. I should be able to hold my phone and say, hey, Claude, and it go, what do you want to do? Like, and I know it seems kind of futuristic, but I feel like that's in our grasp right now, like to do those sorts of things. And it doesn't really feel like that's happening in security as much as it is, let me help developers code better. I'm like, all right, like I get it, but
yeah. Well, I mean, I think the change. I mean, when we look at the impact of AI on the market, the general market, and then impact of AI on security. One, security historically has been a laggard in adoption of technologies versus a leader as an industry. Yeah. Right. Some segments are well ahead, like tech, et cetera, well ahead than others. But if we look at SaaS, and the adoption of SaaS, it took 7 to 10 years for, a lot of mainstream companies to even start programs. And so as a result of that, those use cases, those requirements, those I want kind of features, haven't really come out. What I would say is we are starting to see some really interesting internal development and capabilities. So large companies using AI security teams on solving some of their challenges. And we did this at Unity before I left, was how do we create because we had a Slack chat bot to help employees. They could ask any questions. We would rotate. Somebody was always on the chat, sort of thing. But we took all of our Jira tickets, our docs, everything, and kind of put it into a model. Those were very early days. So it would be a smarter chatbot. It was great. Not as much because of the delaboring, but we told employees, hey, you can ask anything and not feel shame because you could have that vulnerability of, do I need passwords? Whatever silly question or embarrassing question that they want, and they can get an answer and get that guidance. I thought was amazing.
It's like anyway. AI therapist, but for security. Because
Yeah.
people are using
absolutely.
AI as therapists right now, right? Like, please talk to me about this embarrassing thing.
Well, I did that myself. My pet project, one of my pet projects, I gave I run local models, and I gave 20 years of email, all of my text, everything about me. And then I said, build a persona mapping, a psychological persona mapping of me, relating to who I deal with, et cetera. And then, because I was like, I'm getting really tired of you saying, Claude, that I'm amazing and all of my stupid ideas are genius. I'm like, that's not true.
Not true at all. Yeah.
It's not true at all.
Yeah.
And I said, build out the personality that best works with me. Because one, who am I? And then two, what is the best personality that works with me? And it was that data-driven, factual, snarky, maybe somewhat unhealthy, aggressive sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, you're able to do things, but it wasn't the first thing I went to. But now I feel a lot more trusting because I set up that persona of the AI to be more data centric, to be more accurate, to be self-critical in a lot of ways. Anyways.
No, that's it's a huge problem with AI is the sycophantic nature of like every idea you have is fantastic. But you mentioned something there which is interesting too, which is like you kind of side channeled, like I used a local model because it knew everything about you. Like I also think we're gonna go through this massive shift to local models. Like we have to. This costs too much.
It's happening now.
Yeah, like the tokens cost too much. I mean, there's massive value in frontier model stuff and using Mythos, and like I get it, but the cost is so high versus like these run. So I actually think there'll be a whole new generation of AI architects inside these shops that are building the engines of these companies, because there's no chance that two competitors use the same AI. I don't believe it. I just don't think that's where we end up, right? Like you're not going to have, like, I don't know if you saw, there was a article about Kirkland Ellis here in Chicago, big law firm, spent $500 million to build their own AI. because they realized if everybody's using Harvey, we're never going to win a damn case. Like everybody's getting the same advice. And it's like, that doesn't work for us because we have to have, even if it's maybe not as good, it's different. Like it's based on what we think. And so like, I do think there'll be a whole generation of that, which I'm really excited about securing. Cause I think when, you know, cause like you were joking about like adoption, like I remember sitting in CISO's offices of banks and be like, we're never going cloud. It'll never happen. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then 5 years later, they got fired. The AWS architects come in and it's all cloud. So like, you know, the only constant is change in this shit. So it just, because actually you brought some of this up because you started a podcast and I think very interestingly called it Trust Issues, right? Which I think is it's very funny for somebody who's in venture capital and investing and all that, because like, you know, it's sort of like you build a thick skin from being burned over the years. But I guess like kind of closing the loop on the AI part, about like more on the you part of like podcasting and things like that. Like, why Trust Issues and why are you doing it? I would love to sort of, as somebody else who just started a podcast, I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I mean, I keep saying I'm not going to monologue, and yet I do. I love our industry. I mean, and I doing it for 30 some odd years, you take a little bit of personal, I wouldn't say ownership, but you know, it's something that I believe in our mission. I believe in our objective. I love the openness in the community. I love the real problems that we solve. Anyways, and so engaging with others is really fun with me. Other CISOs, vendors, etc. And I thought about doing a podcast for a long time, but there's so many, but there's a really good, helpful security podcasts out there. And I didn't have an idea of a voice, a message, a conversation that was different, right? And so going through the VC world, one of the things that came out, two things. One was every CISO I talked to about, hey, you know, portfolio companies, whatever, it was, hey, okay, listen, Justin, there's like 1,000 of these startups out there and I can't make heads or tails what's what. And I would respond and be like, I can help with that. I mean, I can show you how to analyze these companies to figure out which ones have a higher probability of success than others. Nothing's guaranteed, but there's some rules of the road. So that was one arc. The second one is, every seed or every company, you know, they're trying to get in front of buyers. At the seed stage where we were investing, you know, that early adopter group is pretty small. It's rarely the Fortune 500s. It's 3,000 to 7,000 employees, you know, quick budget cycles. And you have to have a person that is really interested in being a design partner in early stage. And so that group of people is pretty small. And so what do? You reach out to them, let's have a dinner, you know, yet another vendor dinner where you're struggling to get 15 people around the seat. You can't really talk about the product anyway. So the vendor's going, I'm spending $20,000 and to build a relationship. And everybody else is like, I'm here because Bob's here and Bob's my friend, not because of the vendor. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I wanted I felt that there was a content-driven opportunity of if I can select and do my own analysis and select those companies, you know, and I do. Every month I go through the 1,500 seed A and B security companies, but I get it down to 50 or 70. And I said, those are the ones I want to come on. And it's very simple. It's, hey, who are you? What's your journey? And talk about the product. If you want to do a demo, great. But it's just, that's it. It's just talk about the problem openly. And if you're not interested in early stage companies, you don't have to listen. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's one of
no
those things
stress.
about modern content. You just put it out there and
Yeah.
lick it up off the stoop or not. Like, you know, it's one of these things, like even doing this is like, I'm sure 1 million people would rather listen to like Thread of the Day, you know, let's talk about Hugging Face or whatever the thing. Great.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people doing that are awesome at it. Go listen to them. We're doing live, you know, there's a lot of people delving into like live stuff where they're talking about it in real time in chat, like they're Twitch streamers, but for security. amazing. Like, first of all, I don't have the energy for that, but also like I think slow content is more my style, where it's like I want to have a conversation. But yeah, I was listening to some of your episodes, and some of them are friends of mine and people that I know. I was like, this is like a Gartner session without all the bullshit. Like, it's like you actually like just getting into it in some way without, I don't have to wade through a bunch of hype. So I think it's great to have you in that role. Like, I think more people should be supportive of startups. I think in general, we're all benefiting from it in some capacity. So I think like all good CISOs have at least some innovation budget, at least some ideation of like, oh, you're on my radar. Maybe you're not ready for your size or scope yet, but like I kind of been nurturing that.
Well, I've always felt, this was my analysis and talking to, other CISOs, is there are areas of my product space where I don't need innovation. I don't need an innovative firewall. Not today.
Block the traffic,
maybe 5
right?
years.
Yeah.
I just don't need it.
Mhm.
Then there's, okay, I can go to Checkpoint, I can go to Palo Alto, I can get a firewall. That's great. Then there's a whole set of problems that I need something different, whatever that is. Then you go through, are we going to buy or build? And some of those, depending upon your market, you're going to have to build it because it's so unique and so bespoke. Meta does this and a lot, but other ones, you just don't know what's out there. And instead of reaching out to all the VCs that are investing and being inundated with now VCs trying to sell you, how do you get access to, hey, what are the 5 identity AI enabled security companies that are coming out? And I don't want to be bothered. I just want to listen. And
Right.
it was like such an easy value fit that was what it is. And actually it's turned out to a bunch of CISOs now say, hey, here's my projects for the year. Here's the ones I'm really interested in, innovative ideas. What do you got on your list? And I'll send them my Excel sheet and have them see for themselves.
We got to turn you into AI, man. We need like a Justin AI that I could go ask these questions to, because I do a lot of like market analysis, and I'm like, who's doing this? And then you go through this whole process, and I think in general the most interesting stuff's right below pay for play. Like, I know who's in the magic 8-9 magic quadrants, great. I know who they all are, but like that next tier down of like, they're real, they have customers, but like if you go ask AI, it just spits back Gartner to you, basically. Like, so if you are interested in building an AI of you, I'm in. I would recommend it to everybody. So in that kind of vein, I was just listening to a Go to Market podcast, and somebody was talking about, they did like a CISO survey of like, how do they learn about products and how do they make decisions? And in these surveys, CISOs always say things like, education and content. And then they're always like, yeah, we don't care about things like steak dinners, which is just bullshit, because they do care, because they take them. But like, in this new world of like just noise, like just incredible volume of just post and content and podcasts, all this kind of stuff. So if you're talking to one of these CEOs, maybe off mic, and they're like, how do I get anybody to give a shit about what I'm building? What are you telling them? Like, what's your advice to matter?
It's, honestly, it is not, it is the same thing, is build rapidly, build rapidly supportive existing customers, and have those customers, they will naturally do the heavy lifting. That word of mouth is so much more powerful than anything else. You have to do your electronic your demand gen and all of the other capabilities, of course, to kind of fill the funnel and drive it. But usually, especially in those early days, it's really about having those design partners and those customers, and you just being incredibly, almost inappropriately supportive of them in everything that they do. And that doesn't mean doing everything that they ask, because that might not be a good product at the end of the day, but but you can do it so much better. For example, one of the things as a customer is so annoying is, hey, I would love this feature. I would love this capability. And then you put a ticket in on some website and it goes off into the whole, maybe you have a QBR meeting and somebody comes back and says, yep, I acknowledge receipt of this feature. Some of these companies, these startups are like, no, we integrate, we create a Slack channel, you put it in there, we've got an agent that goes through and figures out the PRD for it. We rapidly develop within 48 hours that feature and deliver it to you so you can give us feedback on how to improve it. It's like to create that zealot, that deeply passionate customer, really driving into that kind of type of solution set. Amazing. It's amazing.
That's the superpower of being a startup, is you're not Microsoft. You can move violently fast and solve problems fast. And I do think that's an utilized thing. And it's interesting because if you talk to, like, I'm big into like studying audience, right? Like I do more go to market and messaging and positioning and building fans is what I call, like, you got to have fans of what you're doing. Yeah. And if you get outside of cyber and you talk to anybody who builds fans, comedians, musicians, authors, it's such a grind. It's like one fan at a time. And if you talk to people who do that, they're like, you cannot believe the number of empty bars I've played to, or the number of empty rooms I've told jokes to. And it's like, it's just this horrible grind. And I meet people and I'm like, and especially CEOs who raise some money and they're like, why does anybody care? And I'm like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, everybody would have fans. We'd all play arenas. We'd all be Palo Alto. But you know how many butts they had to kiss to become Palo Alto? It was hard. And so like, I do think like there's to your point, there's sort of value in the grind of like being obsessive about the people you do get to serve and I like, and not expecting the world to come beat a path to your door. So I 100% agree with that. And I love that you're doing that pod. I encourage everybody to listen to it. It's really good. Really smart. I think mostly CEOs, right, on there for the most part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, roughly 80% are, seed and A stage founders. Then I have a smattering of individuals to kind of flush out. I've had a couple of partners of VCs come on and give their perspective on where we need. I've had a couple of recruiters, exec recruiters come on as well. A couple of episodes that have not been released, talking about AI plus security, that intersection. I said Omar Santos, who's the distinguished engineer over at Cisco. And then I had another one just with Ian Mulholland from Salesforce, CISO of Salesforce, and then Jason Lish, CISO over at Cisco as well, to kind of get that practitioner perspective. Robert Naik, who was at the White House doing cyber policy. Cool. And so it's just kind of flushing it out a little bit on some of the topics that, just where do we need and where do we see innovation in the cyber industry? That's kind of the tagline.
It's very cool. I think it's at Somaini Trust Issues on YouTube. I think everybody can follow you on LinkedIn, find you on LinkedIn, click follow, see your content, follow your podcast, follow the materials you put out. I'm sure you're open to CEOs and founders giving you some kind of pitch on what they're up to off camera to learn about it. If you're spending time learning about all these spaces, I'm sure that's interesting. Just, man, I can't tell you what a value that is to our industry. I think you've been valuable to our industry for a very long time. Me too, as far as being around a long time, not as valuable, but just watching you over the years and going like, oh, he's the real deal. It's been really cool. So is there anything else that people can find you at? I'm assuming you're, other LinkedIn and YouTube.
Justin@Somaini.net is my email. LinkedIn is probably the easiest for everybody. And sometimes there's a bar outside of the Presidio that I go to a lot. So, yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, if you're looking for a startup Sherpa, reach out to Justin. He'll tell you the path to success. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I'm a big fan. So keep at it. And if there's anything I can do to help spread the word, let me know. But thanks so much.
I really appreciate that, Aaron. And thanks so much for having me on, and really excited about what you're doing here as well.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks.